The sky over the New Hampshire woods has turned the color of a bruise. Casey stands in front of her cabin, if you can call it that. The roof sags in the middle like an exhausted spine. The shingles have been peeling away for weeks, rectangular patches of failure scattered across the muddy yard like playing cards. The old oak tree at the edge of the property creaks and moans in the rising wind, its trunk whiter than 3 people standing side by side. Every time a gust rolls through, the tree shudders, and the cabin seems to hold its breath. She has done the math. The probability of the roof surviving tonight? Slim. The probability of that tree staying upright through 60-mile-per-hour gusts? Slimmer. The probability of her landlord actually doing something about it before the storm hits? 0. His name is Rudy, and he has finally arrived. He is a small, scrawny man with watery blue eyes, a chain smoker's hollowed cheeks, and one insider that has gone completely black. He blows a lazy ring of cigarette smoke into the cold air, squints at the shingles on the ground, and delivers his verdict with the confidence of a man who has never feared anything because nothing important has ever happened to him. You need to learn to relax a little, Casey. Casey stares at him. She has been here for 7 months. 7 months in this crumbling, creaking, drafty box in the middle of nowhere, and she chose it. She chose the isolation, the silence, the stripped-down life without a smartphone or a television, because after everything that happened in Boston, the quiet felt like medicine. The woods felt safe. The solitude felt earned. But now the sky is threatening to swallow her alive, and the man who is legally responsible for keeping this roof over her head is telling her to relax. "The cabin will be fine," Rudy says, smoke curling from his lips. "I would never put you in any danger, Casey." Casey stares at him. Little does he know, she thinks, there wouldn't be anyone to sue him if that happened. It is not self-pity. Casey is not the self-pity type. But standing in the rising wind, watching her roof shed its last layers of protection, a thought slips through before she can stop it. If the tree falls tonight, if the roof caves in, if I don't make it to morning, nobody will miss me. She doesn't let herself sit with it long. She thinks instead about the radio warning she heard earlier. 60-mile-per-hour gusts, stay off the roads, secure loose objects. She is prepared. She is always prepared. Her father raised her that way. She thinks about Boston, about her students, the ones she genuinely loved teaching, the ones who made her feel like the version of herself she'd always wanted to be. She thinks about how she made a complete mess of that life, how swiftly one impulsive act can bring down everything you've built. The wind rips through her coat. She wraps her arms tighter around herself. "Look," she says to Rudy, keeping her voice flat and even, "I need this roof fixed before that storm hits. It's in the lease." Rudy smiles his yellow-toothed smile. "I didn't bring my tools." Then Rudy makes his proposition. "A drink next week," he suggests, and after that, he'll see what he can do about the roof. His watery blue eyes travel the full length of her body as he says it, and the smile on his face is the kind that expects compliance. Casey feels the revulsion rise in her like cold water. "Just fix the roof," she says, "as the lease requires." "My idea is more fun," he says. And then his arm comes around her shoulders, heavy, presumptuous, uninvited, his cigarette-stained fingers gripping her jacket. "I won't take no for an answer, Casey." The move happens faster than thought. Her father's voice in her head, quiet, precise, methodical. Turn into him, not away. Left arm over his shoulder, right hand grabs his forearm, twist. Her knee behind his knee, the yelp of pain, the cigarette spinning off into the dirt, and then Rudy is face down in the mud, Casey's knee in the small of his back, his arm torqued behind him at an angle that makes his voice crack into a shriek. "You're going to break my arm!" She leans down. Her voice is barely above a whisper. "Don't you dare touch me ever again. Ever. Do you understand me?" He agrees to fix the roof. He agrees to anything. She releases him. He staggers to his feet, rubbing his shoulder, his watery eyes gone hard with wounded pride. "Crazy bitch," he mutters. He tells her he'll be back after the storm, if she survives it. Casey watches him drive away down the slick dirt road. She stands in the wind and cold and thinks, he's the petty type, the kind that doesn't let things go. She thinks about the dresser drawer in her bedroom, about what's inside. Well, she thinks, that's what my gun is for. With Rudy gone, Casey gets to work. She gathers the large stray branches from the yard. She drags her dirt-cheap lawnmower across the property to the tool shed, a dark little structure at the tree line with a questionable roof and a door that rattles like a cough. She tosses the branches and the mower inside. The shed smells of rust and old wood. There is only one small window, no working lights. In the corner, as she turns to leave, she catches it. A glint of something. Metal, maybe. An old gardening tool catching the dim light. She'll deal with it after the storm. Back inside, she bolts the door with a deadbolt she installed herself. She digs out the duct tape from the pantry and moves from window to window, pressing X marks across each pane of glass. It won't stop the wind, but it might keep the glass from shattering inward if a branch hits. She lights the cedar candles, one in the kitchen, 2 in the living room, a big one in the bathroom, and 3 in the bedroom, on the dresser, the nightstand, and the windowsill. The kitchen fills with the warm scent of cedar and garlic as her pasta sauce simmers on the stove. Outside, the storm gathers like a held breath. The great oak tree groans. Casey stands in her bedroom, brown hair in a ponytail, silver chain at her throat, and reaches for the last candle. She leans towards the windowsill, towards the dark glass, and then she stops. There is a face on the other side of the window, pale, still, watching. The candle nearly slips from her fingers. She stumbles back, a scream tearing out of her before she can swallow it. When she lurches forward again to look, to be sure, the glass shows nothing but darkness and rain. Just the storm, just the night. But she saw it. She knows she saw it. Casey presses her palm flat against the cold glass and stares into the black tree line. Her breath fogs the window. Her heart hammers against her ribs. And somewhere out there, in the dark, between the cabin and the forest's edge, the tool shed door slowly swings shut. Casey stands at the bedroom window, her palm pressed flat against the cold glass, her breath fogging the pane in short, sharp bursts. Nothing. Just the dark tree line, just the rain hammering the yard, just the storm bending the branches into wild, reaching shapes. She tells herself it was the moon, the light hitting the glass at a strange angle, the storm playing tricks, her exhausted mind conjuring shapes in the dark. She picks the candle up from under the bed, along with a small cloud of dust bunnies, and sets it on the windowsill with hands that are almost steady. This damn storm is making me hallucinate. She almost believes it. She carries a glass of water back from the kitchen and pauses at the window over the sink. The yard is dark and rain-slicked, the property barely visible through the downpour. She cups her eyes around the glass and peers toward the tree line, and then she sees it. Something moves near the tool shed. Not a rabbit, not a deer. Something distinctly, unmistakably human. And as she watches, breath held, knuckles white against the glass, the tool shed door swings slowly shut. A cold, electric feeling slides down the back of her neck. Her hair stands on end. The door is now rattling in the wind, neither fully open nor fully closed, as though someone has just stepped inside and pulled it nearly shut behind them. Or stepped outside. She barely has time to process what she's seen before the sound comes, a jarring, pounding noise at the front door. Not the wind, not a branch. A fist. Casey's hand goes to her pocket before she reaches the door. She opens it. Standing on her porch, soaked and blinking in the candlelight, is Lee Traynor, her nearest neighbor, half a mile away through the woods. He is a man in his 30s, not too hard on the eyes, with thick, messy brown hair plastered to his forehead, blue eyes carrying that familiar crease of concern between them, and a beard he's been growing out since he arrived. His nose looks like it's been broken once before. Casey has always thought, against her will, that it suits him. He holds a flashlight in one hand and looks at her the way he always looks at her, like he's quietly calculating whether she's about to fall apart. "Hey, Casey, I just wanted to check on you before the storm. It's gonna be a big one. You sure you have everything you need?" "I'm good," she says. "I got everything I need." She does not invite him inside. She stands in the doorway and watches him the way she watches everyone, carefully from a safe distance, looking for the thing beneath the thing. Lee nods at the windows. His eyes travel across the duct tape X's with the expression of a man who knows something she doesn't. "Did you put duct tape on the windows?" "To keep them secure," Casey says. "No." His voice is gentle but firm. "You never tape windows during a storm. If they do break, they'll break into bigger, more dangerous shards. You don't want a huge piece of glass flying at you." Casey stares at him for a moment. She hates that he's right. "Fine, I'll take it down when you leave." He asks about the roof. He can see the state of it from the outside. She tells him Rudy came, that it'll be fixed next week. Lee's expression makes clear what he thinks of Rudy's reliability. "Rudy is useless," he says simply. "You should let me fix it." Then the offer she knew was coming. "You should come stay at my place tonight. I've been working on my roof. It's solid. I've got storm shutters, a generator for the well pump. You can have my bedroom. I'll take the couch. No funny business, I swear. I'm just worried about you." Casey looks at him. He is, by every measure, a perfect gentleman. He has never touched her without permission, never raised his voice, never pushed past a boundary she drew. And still, she doesn't trust him. It isn't anything she can point to directly. It's the accumulation of small things. The way he always seems to find a reason to knock on her door. The way his explanation for moving out here, wanting to be closer to nature, has always felt like a blatant lie. The way he looks at her sometimes, like he already knows the answer to a question he hasn't asked yet. She told him once about her nightmare, the recurring one, where she is on fire. She regretted it immediately. You don't hand your vulnerabilities to someone you don't trust. "I'll be fine, Lee," she says. "I promise." She asks, almost too casually, if he was walking behind her house 10 minutes ago. He heads. "No. Why?" "No reason." She finds him a maroon umbrella from the closet. He takes it with a small, careful smile, the smile of a man who has learned not to push. "Be careful tonight," he says, and then he steps off the porch and disappears into the dark trees, the umbrella almost immediately losing its battle with the wind. Casey watches the beam of his flashlight bob between the trees until it vanishes. She closes the door, bolts it, stands in the quiet of the cabin listening to the storm tear itself apart outside. She feels, oddly, more alone with him gone than she did before he arrived. She doesn't let herself think about why. The pasta is shimmering, the candles are lit, the storm is fully awake now, 30-mile-per-hour gusts shaking the windows, the great oak tree outside groaning like something in pain. Casey eats standing at the counter, watching the shed through the kitchen window. The door is still, no light, nothing moving. When the landline rings, the sound is sharp enough to make her flinch. It's Rudy. His voice comes through a curtain of static, deep and crackling, barely coherent. But she catches enough to understand he's been listening to the radio. The storm is worse than they thought, 60-mile-per-hour gusts, and for the first time all day, Rudy says what Casey has known for hours. "I'm starting to agree with you that the roof might not be safe tonight. I don't want you to get killed tonight." He tells her he's called around, found one last room at a bed and breakfast in town, booked it for her. Casey exhales. She will leave. She will drive carefully on the flooded dirt roads and sleep somewhere with a roof that won't collapse around her ears. She picks up a pen. "What's the address?" a long string of static. "Can you... me? The address is..." More static. Then silence. She presses the receiver harder against her ear. "Rudy! Rudy, what's the address?" Nothing. Not even a dial tone. The line is dead. She sets the phone down and looks at it for a long moment. She is completely cut off. No phone, no smartphone, no internet, the roads flooded, the woods too dangerous to walk in the dark, Lee's cabin half a mile away, and even that feels like the wrong kind of safe. She is, in every way that matters tonight, absolutely alone. She tries to eat, she tries to think, she stares out the window at the dark yard and at the great oak tree leaning 45 degrees in every gust, and she tells herself, just get through the night, just get through until morning. And then she sees it. A beam of light moving behind the single small window of the tool shed, slow and deliberate, back and forth. Not moonlight, not a reflection, a flashlight, and someone is holding it. There is no electricity in that shed. She knows this. She put the lawnmower in there this afternoon. She saw the glint in the corner. She thought it was a gardening tool. Oh, her stomach drops. She cannot sleep knowing someone is out there. She cannot pretend she didn't see it. She cannot call for help, and she cannot drive away, and she cannot walk through a 60-mile-per-hour storm to Lee's cabin and ask a man she doesn't trust to protect her from a person she hasn't even identified yet. There is only one thing to do. She goes to the bedroom. She opens the top drawer of her dresser. The Glock G43X is exactly where she left it, a compact, lightweight, and loaded, her father's voice in her head. Stance, grip, breathe, squeeze. She pulls on her waterproof jacket, she laces her heavy galoshes, she tucks the gun into her jacket pocket and wraps her fingers around the handle. And then she goes outside. The wind hits her like a wall the moment she steps off the porch. Cold, violent, relentless, it presses against her chest and steals the breath right out of her lungs. The rain doesn't fall so much as attack, driving sideways in sheets that sting her cheeks and blur her vision. Casey ducks her head and pushes forward across the yard, one hand gripping the flashlight, the other wrapped tight around the Glock in her jacket pocket. She keeps her flashlight off. If someone is in that shed, she wants the advantage of surprise. She navigates by memory, the familiar shape of the yard, the dark bulk of the tree line, the groaning of the great oak to her left that is bending 45 degrees in every gust, its roots tearing at the earth with every surge of wind. The tool shed door has been ripped clean off its hinges by the time she reaches it. It lies twisted in the mud a few feet away, one hinge still attached. Useless. The darkness inside the shed is absolute. She pauses at the threshold. Please let it be an animal, she thinks. Please let it be a raccoon. She steps inside. The floorboards groan beneath her boots. Hello? She whispers into the dark. Silence. Just the howl of the storm at her back and the drumming of rain on the thin metal roof. She raises the flashlight, takes a slow breath, turns it on. The beam sweeps the shed. Lawnmower, rusty shovel, branches stacked in the corner, and then, near the back wall, almost entirely hidden in shadow, a lump, small, still, covered by a thin blanket so inadequate it barely reaches the floor on either side. Casey transfers the flashlight to her left hand. Her right hand closes around the grip of the Glock in her jacket pocket. She keeps her voice low and steady, a teacher's voice, the voice she used for the students who came to school already wound too tight for the day. I know you're under there. The lump doesn't move. Listen, my name is Casey. I live in the cabin right over there. This tool shed is not stable. You can't stay in here. But if you come back to my house, just for the night, I won't tell anyone you're here, I promise. A pause. The rain hammers the roof. I've just made dinner, and I've got cookies. The blanket moves. It lowers slowly, first revealing a pair of hands, knuckles white around the handle of a switchblade, and then a face. Casey exhales. It is a girl. 12, maybe 13, though she is the size of a child 3 years younger, scrawny and painfully thin, her frame so slight that the storm outside feels like it could carry her away. Her red hair is stringy and plastered to her scalp. Her face is deathly pale, a faint spray of freckles across the bridge of her nose, and her eyes, enormous, soulful, electric blue, blink up at Casey in the flashlight beam with an expression that is equal parts terror and furious defiance. She is trembling so hard her teeth are chattering, and she does not let go of the knife. Casey releases her grip on the Glock. Slowly, deliberately. You do not pull a weapon on a child. "Hi," she says carefully. "Are you okay?" The girl gets to her feet, and that is when Casey sees it. The blood. It is everywhere. The front of her gray hoodie is soaked through, darkened from chest to hem. Her blue jeans are stained all the way down both legs. Her hands, even in the dim flashlight glow, are caked with it, dried into the crevices of her palms, under her nails, into every line of her small knuckles. And yet, her face is completely clean. Not a drop. Casey's stomach turns over. She stares. The girl stares back. And there is something so deliberate in her silence, so practiced and braced, that it's almost worse than tears. Are you okay?" The girl gives her a look. It is an extraordinary look for a 12-year-old. Ancient and withering and faintly contemptuous, the look of someone who's been asked stupid questions by adults their entire life. "Bloody nose," she says. Her voice is barely audible over the wind. Casey looks at her clean, unmarked face, looks at the blood saturating her clothes from collar to knee. She says nothing. She offers her hand instead. Getting back to the cabin is its own ordeal. The wind has grown teeth. It shoves them sideways as they cross the yard, and the girl, so thin, so slight, staggers with every gust like something that might just blow away. Casey walks close behind her, one hand half raised to catch her if she falls. The great oak tree groans above them both, leaning and straining, its roots pulling free of the earth with each surge of wind. Casey watches it with one eye the whole way across the yard. They make it to the porch. Casey holds the door. The girl steps inside first, dripping rain onto the floorboards, and the storm slams the door shut behind them like a full stop. Inside, the girl stands in the center of the living room and drips. She does not take off her coat. She does not lower her guard. She stands with her arms wrapped around herself, pale and shivering, switchblade still in her pocket, backpack still on her back, and she watches Casey the way a feral cat watches a hand reaching toward it, willing to accept warmth, not yet willing to trust the source. Casey doesn't push. She has been a teacher. She knows how to wait. She finds a pair of fuzzy slippers from the bedroom closet and sets them on the floor in front of the girl without comment. The girl looks at them for a moment, then she sits down on the floor, not a chair, the floor where she can move quickly if she needs to, and peels off her waterlogged sneakers and soaked socks. Her feet are tiny, pale, and cold-reddened. Casey's size 7 slippers swallow them completely. Something about those small feet in those oversized slippers cracked open a quiet ache in Casey's chest that she has no name for. She turns to the kitchen to start the pasta water. The girl eventually sheds the coat, then the hoodie, leaving her in a thin t-shirt, and it is then, under the candlelight, that Casey sees them. Small, round, scattered across both arms like a constellation of old wounds. Cigarette burns, a dozen at least, healed to pale white circles on the girl's thin skin. Casey has to look away. She focuses on the pasta strand she's about to throw at the kitchen cabinet to test if it's done, a trick her father taught her, and the girl watches this bizarre ritual with narrowed, confused eyes until the strand sticks and Casey announces the pasta is ready. She serves 2 plates. The girl falls on the food like she hasn't eaten in days. She barely chews between bites. She uses the bread to wipe the sauce until the bowl is practically clean. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The hunger says everything. At some point during the second plate, the girl loosens her grip on the knife just enough to wipe her chin, and Casey sees it. Written on the handle in permanent marker, the L's slightly smudged, E-L-E-A-N-O-R. Is your name Eleanor? Casey asks. The girl curls her lip. I hate that name. Nobody calls me that. But she doesn't deny it. After the spaghetti, Casey brings out the tin of chocolate chip cookies. The girl's eyes go to the ribbon and card on the lid immediately. Dear Casey, happy birthday, Lee. She reads it out loud and then looks up with the directness that only 12-year-olds and interrogators possess. Who's Lee? A friend. A boyfriend? No. My mom says boys never do anything nice unless they want something. Casey thinks about Lee, his concerned blue eyes, the way he always finds an excuse to check on her, the birthday cookies, the night she fled his cabin because he leaned toward her and she panicked. She thinks about the feeling that something underneath his kindness doesn't quite add up. Your mom might not be entirely wrong, she says carefully, and leaves it there. The girl eats 3 cookies and asks no more about Lee, at least not yet. Instead, she watches Casey over the rim of her hot chocolate mug with those enormous blue eyes, and after a long silence, she says, I'm almost there, you know, almost to where I'm going. Casey looks at her. There in the middle of the New Hampshire woods, the nearest town is miles away. The roads are flooded, the phones are dead. Almost there. She came here on purpose, for someone specific. Casey is absolutely certain of it, and equally certain she does not know the whole story. She leans forward, elbows on the table, and meets the girl's eyes steadily. Then let me make you a promise, an infinity promise, the kind you can never break. The girl tilts her head. What happens if you break it? You die instantly from dysentery, death by diarrhea. Casey Guess stares at her, and then, for just a flicker, just a moment, the walls come down. A smile breaks across her pale face like a crack of light under a door. Casey raises her right hand like an oath. I, Casey, infinity promise that I will not tell a single living soul you're here without your permission, on penalty of death by dysentery. Eleanor looks at her for a long moment. Then she loosens her grip on the knife in her lap. Not all the way. Before she was Casey, she was Ella. Before the cabin and the gun and the storm, there was a cold plastic chair, a principal's office, and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich she never got to eat. The plastic chair in Principal Garber's office has no padding. Ella has noticed this every single time she has sat in it, which is now 6 times this school year. The chair is designed to be uncomfortable, a small, deliberate cruelty to remind you that you are here as a punishment, not a guest. The irony is that Ella's own backside has no padding either, so the 2 hard surfaces press against each other with a particular bone-deep unpleasantness that she suspects is unique to her. She watches Principal Garber across his desk. He is a heavy-set man with a comb-over that has given up, a single damp lock of it swinging slowly down his forehead as he speaks, hypnotic in its defeat. There is a crumb of something, bread or cake, lodged in the corner of his mouth. The office is inexplicably freezing, as though the school has decided that guilt should feel cold. Ella, he says, this is becoming a problem. She knows the speech. She could deliver it herself at this point. This is not the first time we have caught you stealing from another student. The sandwich in question was peanut butter and jelly in a brown paper sack. She had spotted it on the edge of a lunch table, unclaimed, and for exactly 45 seconds she had convinced herself it was abandoned. Then Mrs. Callahill had materialized out of nowhere and grabbed it clean out of her hands. "I wasn't stealing, I just got confused. Honest mistake." She knows it wasn't her lunch. She almost never has a lunch. Garber suggests the hot meals in the cafeteria, suggests the discounted lunch program, the free lunch application. He asks the question all the adults in her life ask when they finally notice her. "Do you have enough food at home, Ella?" She doesn't even blink. "Yeah, totally," she says. "My refrigerator is completely full. Like, you literally couldn't even fit anything else in it." This is technically true. The refrigerator at home is absolutely full, with brown vegetables that have dissolved into liquid, gray mystery meat fossilizing in the freezer, and 24 condiment bottles with their lids glued shut by ancient, sticky residue. Nothing in it is edible, but it is full. Garber gives her 1 week of detention. Ella thinks, kid jail, at least they might have snacks. She collects her detention slip and steps into the front office, and stops. 2 other students are already waiting. The first is Anton Peterson. He is sprawled in the chair nearest the door with the particular boneless ease of a boy who has spent so much time in trouble that trouble has become furniture. His spiky hair is green. Genuinely green, a drugstore dye job that has leaked faint trails of color down the back of his neck. His jeans have a hole at the right knee, and his right cheekbone is dark red and already beginning to swell, the unmistakable geography of a recent fist. He looks at her, she looks at him. "What are you in for?" Ella asks. "None of your damn business," Anton says, with the casual hostility of someone who insults people as a form of greeting. He looks her up and down. "What are you here for? I didn't know they sent you to the principal for being too ugly." Ella raises her middle finger. He raises his. They do this carefully, below desk level, so the secretary doesn't see. The second student waiting is Brittany Carter. Brittany is not in trouble. Brittany is never in trouble. She's being picked up early for a dentist appointment, which is, of course, the kind of thing that happens when you have a parent who schedules things and a car that shows up. She sits in her chair the way she does everything, effortlessly, perfectly, as though the world arranged itself around her without being asked. Glossy black hair, clear blue eyes, naturally red lips, a clean white blouse with no stains. "Hi," Ella says, because she is not entirely without hope. "I can't believe you got sent to the principal." Brittany looks at her with polite confusion. "I didn't. My mom is picking me up early." "Oh, right," Ella says, turns away before Brittany can see her face. She is not sad about it. She is not. She just remembers, vividly and involuntarily, the 4th grade birthday party she wasn't invited to. The way the invitations were handed out in class, one by one, a small pink envelope, a gift from the universe to each deserving child. And then, class ended, and Ella's desk was the only one without an envelope on it. She had sat there a long time, waiting, wondering if hers had fallen on the floor. It hadn't. As she pushes through the office door, she feels Anton's eyes on her back. She doesn't look. The school day ends, and Ella goes home. Home is a townhouse on Birchwood Lane that she has never once invited a friend to visit, which is easy to manage because she has not had a real friend since 2nd or 3rd grade. The house is the reason for this. The house is the reason for a lot of things. She has to turn sideways to open the front door. Not because the door sticks, though it does, but because the hallway behind it is so densely packed with empty plastic bottles, crumpled paper bags, and towers of cardboard that the door can only open about 14 inches before it catches on the hoard. Ella has learned to turn sideways, suck in her stomach, and slide through the gap like water through a crack. Inside, the house is a labyrinth. Her mother has arranged the junk, though arranged is too deliberate a word, into series of narrow trails that wind between the stacks like paths through a papery jungle. The living room couch is 2 old-stained mattresses propped against each other. The coffee table hosts 8 ashtrays, all full, 20 pencil holders, all bristling with worn-down stubs, and 4 unopened boxes of Tupperware. The stove in the kitchen is covered in a rotating cast of thrift store junk and cannot be used for cooking. The refrigerator is full, technically, of things that have stopped being food. It smells. The whole house smells. Stale cigarette smoke on every surface, rising from the carpet and the curtains and the upholstery. Below that, something sweeter and more sinister. The rot of organic things her mother has acquired and forgotten. The peaches in the closet, going to liquid and maggot. The pumpkins somewhere in the bedroom. The unlaundered mountain in the basement that grows a little higher every week because the washing machine has been broken for a year and her mother won't let a repairman in. This is why Ella's clothes smell. This is why they call her Smella. She showers every single night. It doesn't matter. Ella's room is at the top of the stairs. Or it was, once. Her desk is occupied now. Her mother brought home a large fish tank from the Goodwill 3 weeks ago. It's a good fish tank, heavy glass, a solid metal frame, and Ella might have liked it if it contained fish. It does not contain fish. It contains a collection of muffin tins, serving spoons, and ceramic measuring cups that her mother decided were better stored at eye level than anywhere sensible. The fish tank sits in the middle of Ella's desk and takes up most of it. There is no fish, there is no water, there is no room to do homework. Ella does her homework on her bed, sitting cross-legged among piles of her mother's overflow junk, old magazines, a box of Christmas ornaments, a broken lamp. She holds her English essay, the one she got a D on, and reads her teacher's red pen notes in the margins. Underdeveloped, unclear thesis. See me after class. She thinks about Brittany Carter, who has a father who is a professor, who has a desk, who has a quiet house, who has a lunch every day that is hers. Ella puts the essay down. She thinks about her own father instead, the one she has never met, the one her mother never talks about, the one who exists only as a blank space in the narrative of Ella's life where a person should be. She has built him carefully from whatever raw material she can find. He has reddish-brown hair, like hers. He has blue eyes. She must, because her mother's eyes are brown and hers are blue, and she paid attention in life sciences. He has a nice job. A bank, maybe. He smiles when people come to his window. She imagines finding him. She imagines his face when she tells him who she is. She imagines the smile spreading slowly across his face, surprised, then warm, then certain. "Would you like to come and live with me?" he asks in this version. And Ella, in this version, says yes, definitely yes. She puts the essay in her bag. She turns off the lamp. She does not sleep for a long time.
The story moves back to the present, the now timeline.
The storm has not eased. If anything, it has found a second wind. Casey can hear it working at the roof, testing the nails, pressing its weight against the shingles, and every few minutes a gust hits the cabin walls hard enough to rattle the window panes in their frames. The power went out an hour ago. The cabin runs now entirely on candlelight, the fireplace, and the knowledge that the nearest help is miles of flooded roads away. Eleanor is in the bathroom. Casey stands in the living room and looks at the backpack. It is light pink, a discount bag, the kind you find in the bargain bin at a Walmart, built for a short lifespan and a light load. Eleanor has stuffed it so full, the zipper is straining at both ends, the seams pulling taut with the effort of containing whatever is inside. It sits on the living room floor where Eleanor dropped it, and from the side, from the left panel, just below the top seam, something dark and wet is seeping slowly through the cheap fabric. Blood. Not a lot, but enough. Casey stands very still and looks at it. She thinks about the blood on Eleanor's clothes when she found her in the shed, the blood on her hands. A bloody nose, the girl had said, with her clean, unmarked face and her ancient, practiced eyes. What's inside that backpack? Casey thinks. Or, better question, what is still bleeding inside that backpack? The toilet flushes. Casey steps back. She straightens up. She folds her hands and fixes her expression into something that does not betray the cold queasiness climbing through her chest. When Eleanor pads back into the living room in Casey's oversized, fuzzy slippers, Casey is standing by the fireplace, feeding it another log, as though she has thought of nothing else. Later, much later, when the cookies are gone and the fire has burned lower and Eleanor announces she is ready to sleep, Casey leads her to the bedroom. She gives Eleanor her own bed. She tells her she'll take the couch. She lights one candle on the nightstand and leaves it burning because Eleanor, she has noticed, does not sleep easily in total darkness. Small things. A teacher learns small things. She is crossing back through the living room when she sees it. A scrap of paper on the floor. It must have slipped from Eleanor's pocket when she sat down. A piece of lined notebook paper, slightly damp from the rain, folded once in half. Casey looks at the closed bedroom door, listens. Nothing. She picks it up. She unfolds it carefully. It is a map. Hand-drawn in blue ink, slightly smudged where the rain got to it, but completely legible. The roads are labeled in a child's careful printing. The landmarks are noted with small, earnest sketches. And at the top of the map, marking the final destination with a small, precise star, Casey's jaw goes tight. The star is here. This cabin, this property. Eleanor didn't wander here. She didn't get lost. She didn't stumble through the storm by accident. She followed directions, specific, detailed, hand-drawn directions to Casey's yard, soaked in blood, carrying a knife. The bathroom door is still closed. Casey folds the map, tucks it into her own pocket, and sits back down on the sofa with her hands folded in her lap, perfectly still, perfectly calm. Inside, she is anything but. She waits until Eleanor's breathing deepens and slows, until the candle in the bedroom has burned to a low, steady flicker, until only the sounds are the fire and the storm and the groaning of the great oak tree outside. Then she goes to the backpack. She opens the smaller front pouch first, carefully, one eye on the bedroom door, and finds it at the bottom, beneath a folded bandana and 2 crumpled receipts. A notebook, plain cover, the deep green of a Christmas tree, damp at the corners from the rain, and where Casey's blood-touched fingers close around it, because she had touched Eleanor's clothes when she helped her inside and never quite got it all off, a smear of crimson presses itself into the cover like a signature. She takes it to the couch. She sits close to the fireplace. She opens it. The first few pages are math homework. Equations, scratch work, numbers lining up neatly in columns, Eleanor solving for X with quiet competence, the handwriting small and precise. Casey thinks, she's decent at maths. She turns the page. The next section is art. Casey looks at the first drawing for a long time before she fully understands what she's seeing. A woman, drawn in red, blue, and black ink, with the kind of careful, meticulous detail that speaks of hours spent getting it right. The woman has shoulder-length hair, a solid build, a square jaw. Casey looks at the drawing. She looks at it for a long time. Then she turns the page. The second drawing is worse than the first. The same woman, the square jaw, the shoulder-length hair, but this time she is seated in a kitchen chair. Her wrists are bound behind the chair back with what appears to be duct tape, her ankles taped to the chair legs, her mouth is open in a scream. Around her, the details of a small cabin kitchen are rendered with unmistakable specificity. The stove, the pantry, the window above the sink. Casey's window. Casey's pantry, Casey's kitchen. She keeps turning. The third drawing? The same woman, a bloody hole where her right eye should be, blood running in careful inked lines down her cheek and over her lips. The fourth? A noose around her neck, her tongue protruding grotesquely, her feet dangling above a wooden floor. The fifth? The woman's ear, sliced clean off, lying on a surface beside her, rendered in intimate anatomical detail. Casey turns pages with hands that she forces to stay steady. Each drawing is more detailed than the last, each one more deliberate. Not the impulsive scrawling of a disturbed child venting anger. These are studied, patient, the kind of drawings you make when you have thought about something for a long time. The woman in every single drawing has bright blue eyes. Casey closes the notebook. She sits for a long moment staring at the fire. The flames have burned low. She can feel the cold seeping in from the windows behind her. She thinks about the map in her pocket. She thinks about the blood on the backpack. She thinks about the girl in her bedroom with the ancient eyes and the circled cigarette scars and the switchblade with her name written on it. She thinks, "Who are you, Eleanor? And why do you want me dead?" She hides the notebook back under the sofa cushion. She kicks her slippers back on. She breathes. When Eleanor calls from the bedroom, "Casey, could you come sit with me?" She goes. Eleanor is not asleep. She is sitting up in the center of the bed, Casey's fuzzy tan sweater pulled over her t-shirt, her enormous blue eyes catching the last of the candlelight. She says the dark makes her nervous and asks Casey to sit with her. She asks, voice careful and casual, the way a 12-year-old sounds when they want something but won't admit to wanting it, for a story. A scary one. Casey sits on the edge of the bed and tells her a campfire story. A couple in a broken-down car, a scraping sound on the roof, a hook, a truck driver flashing his high beams, a man whose head falls off when you remove his tie. Eleanor listens with her chin on her knees. When Casey finishes, she says, "That was a terrible story. It doesn't even make sense." Casey almost smiles. "All right, you tell one." Eleanor is quiet for a moment. And then she says, "It was a dark and stormy night. This old woman named Cassie was at her cabin in the woods when she heard a noise coming from outside." Casey listens. The story unfolds slowly at first. A girl found in the storm, brought inside, given dinner and cookies, an infinity promise made. Casey recognizes every detail. It is her evening, reflected back at her like a mirror held slightly wrong. And then Eleanor's voice, still quiet and even and perfectly calm. When she thought the girl wasn't paying attention, Cassie went through her backpack. After that, the girl couldn't trust Cassie. The infinity promise was just a lie she made up to trick the girl into trusting her. Casey goes very still. So she cut off her arms and legs, and she used them to feed the fire, which had started to die down. But the arms and legs made the fire too powerful. It jumped out of the fireplace. The girl made a run for it, but Cassie couldn't because she was stuck, bleeding on the couch. So she burned to death in her own cabin just as the sun was coming up, and she never told a soul about the girl. So I guess she did keep her promise in the end. Silence. Eleanor looks at her with those enormous, ancient eyes. "What's good about that story," she says pleasantly, "is that the story is similar to what's happening here, right now, and it makes you worried that maybe those things could happen to you." She tilts her head. "Do you understand?" Casey looks at the girl in her bed, in her sweater, eating her cookies, carrying a switchblade and a notebook full of drawings of her death. "Yes," she says quietly. "I understand." Later, long after Eleanor has supposedly gone back to sleep, Casey remembers the gun. She left it. She left the Glock in the top drawer of the bedroom dresser when she brought Eleanor in from the cold because there had been so much to manage at all once, and it had seemed, briefly, catastrophically, like a thing she could deal with later. Later is now. She kicks off her slippers. She crosses the living room in her socked feet, moving slowly, placing each step with care on the board she has memorized for their creaking. She eases the bedroom door open. The hinges scream, a long metallic whine that sounds, in the silent cabin, like a fire alarm. She freezes. No movement from the bed. Or she tells herself there is no movement from the bed. She tells herself the shape under the blankets is still, still, still. She crosses the cold bedroom, she can almost see her breath, and reaches the dresser. She eases the top drawer open. It squeaks. She pushes her hand to the back beneath the folded clothes. Nothing. The gun is not there. She turns. Eleanor is sitting up in the center of the bed, fully dressed, watching her. The Glock is in both hands, aimed directly at Casey's head, small, pale fingers wrapped around the grip with a steadiness that has no business being in the hands of a 12-year-old. "Looking for this, Casey?" Casey's legs go to liquid. She stares at the gun, stares at the girl. "It's mine," she manages. Eleanor's expression doesn't change. "Is it yours? Should I give it back, then?" A sound from outside, enormous, cataclysmic, the groan of something vast and old finally giving way. The whole cabin shudders. Somewhere beyond the walls, the great oak tree has made its decision. The crash, when it comes, is like a fist through the world. In the ringing silence that follows, Eleanor says, voice perfectly even, "Keep your hands in the air." Casey does as she is told. She walks ahead of Eleanor into the kitchen, hands raised, the gun at the back of her head. She thinks about distance and angles. She thinks about the moves her father taught her. She calculates, and then she discards, because the girl is too close and the gun is too steady, and the probability of getting it wrong is too high. Eleanor tells her to get the duct tape from the pantry, then to sit in the kitchen chair. Casey sits. She thinks about the drawings in the green notebook, the woman in the kitchen chair, the wrists bound behind the back, the duct tape around the ankles, the open, screaming mouth. She thinks, she drew this first. She planned this before she even arrived. Eleanor works quickly and efficiently. Wrists behind the chair back, ankles to the legs, a wide strip of tape across Casey's chest, pinning her against the wood. She tests the restraints when she's done, tugging at each one, checking for slack. There is none. "It's nothing personal," she says. Then she takes the candle from the counter, crosses the kitchen, and disappears back into the bedroom. Casey sits in the chair in the dark kitchen and listens to the storm. The fire in the living room is dying. The cold is coming in under the door. Outside, where the tool shed used to be, the great oak tree lies defeated in the mud. She thinks about the notebook, the map, the blood in the backpack. She thinks about the name etched on the switchblade and the cigarette burns on those thin, pale arms, and the girl who followed a hand-drawn map through a storm to reach this property with blood already on her clothes. Nothing personal. Casey thinks, who are you going to, Eleanor, if not me? And then, slowly, terrifyingly, she begins to understand.
The story flips back to the before timeline.
The front door won't open all the way. It never does anymore. The hall is packed so tightly with empty plastic bottles and crumpled paper bags that the door catches after 14 inches and stops. Ella turns sideways, sucks in her stomach, and slides through the gap the way she always does, trailing her backpack behind her. She stands in the hallway and looks at the bottles. There are more of them than yesterday. There are always more than yesterday. Her mother came home from the grocery store at some point and dropped 2 paper sacks full of 2-liter bottles, store-brand soda, the labels already peeling, and they are sitting on top of the existing pile, like a small plastic monument to everything that is wrong with this house. Something snaps in Ella, quiet and clean, like a twig underfoot. She goes to the kitchen, she finds a garbage bag under the sink. She comes back and she starts filling it. Bottles first, then the crumpled paper bags, then the expired macaroni and cheese boxes from the pantry, cardboard going soft with age, the powdered cheese inside calcified to a solid block that would break a tooth. She works quickly, systematically, with the focused energy of someone who has needed to do this for a long time. She's on her third bag when the front door opens. Her mother fills the doorway. Desiree is dressed for a date. Skin-tight jeans, a clingy top, dangly earrings swinging, heels adding 3 inches she doesn't need. Her golden hair is done, her makeup is flawless. She looks like a woman going somewhere important, which means Ella is staying here, which means Desiree's eyes go to the garbage bags. "What," she says slowly, "do you think you are doing?" The argument is brief, because arguments with Desiree are always brief. They end not when a resolution is reached, but when Desiree decides they are over. "These are not garbage," her mother says, snatching a bottle from the bag. "I was saving these." "For what?" "None of your business for what." "Mom, the macaroni expired a year ago." "Nothing expires. That is a trick they play to make you buy more." "There are worms in the peaches in the closet." "Don't touch my things." Her mother's voice climbs. "You think you're too good to live here? You think you're better than this?" She wrenches the garbage bag from Ella's hands. "If you're going to throw away perfectly good food, then you can go without dinner tonight." Ella knows what is coming. She has known it since the moment she saw the going out clothes, the heels, the earrings. There are rules in this house. Unwritten, unspoken, but absolute. When Desiree has a date, Ella cannot be trusted alone, cannot be allowed to touch things, cannot be left unsupervised in a house full of treasures that might be thrown away or broken or tampered with while her mother is gone. "Please," Ella says. Her voice comes out smaller than she wants it to. "Please, Mommy, I'll be good, I promise. I'll sit on my bed all night and not touch anything." Her mother looks at her the way she always looks at her, as though Ella is a problem she did not sign up for and has not yet found the solution to. "I can't trust you." She grabs Ella by the forearm. Her nails are long, she has always kept them long, and they cut in deep, sharp and specific, drawing 4 thin lines of blood across Ella's skin before Ella can flinch. She is swung by her arm, stumbling and catching her heel on a tower of bottles, and then she's inside the hall closet, and the door is slamming, and the lock is turning, and her mother's voice comes through the wood, flat and hollow. "I won't be gone long." The front door slams. The house goes silent. The closet is dark. Ella fumbles for the pull string. Her fingers rake the air. Nothing. Nothing. And then she finds it and yanks, and the bulb overhead flippers like something not entirely committed to the idea of light. It's dim and dying, throwing more shadow than illumination, but it is enough. The closet is small. Every inch of it is occupied. Towers of old magazines line both walls, their covers faded and water-stained. Empty soda bottles are wedged into every gap. Old coats hang overhead, brushing the top of her head, smelling of dust and something beneath the dust. And then there's the other smell. It arrives like a physical thing, a wave of it, dense and sweet and deeply wrong. The smell of something organic that has been left too long in an enclosed space. Ella's stomach clenches. She breathes through her teeth and turns slowly, scanning the closet for the source. There, on top of a magazine tower, a grocery bag, sides bulging, handles twisted closed. She already knows. Something in her already knows. She reaches for the bag anyway. Opens it. Peaches. Or what were peaches once. They have dissolved, actually dissolved, into a dark, rancid liquid that pools at the bottom of the bag in a thick, sweet-smelling sludge. And moving through the sludge, pale and purposeful, are the maggots. Dozens of them, small white larvae writhing in the fetid juice, turning the bag into something alive and wrong and impossible to look away from. Ella drops the bag. She hits the closet door with both fists. "Let me out! Let me out!" Her voice tears itself raw in her throat. She pounds until her fists throb and her palms burn, and the skin on her knuckles is hot and scraped. "Please, Mommy, please let me out." The house is silent. The front door is still. Her mother is gone, somewhere with heels and earrings and golden hair, and Ella is here, with the maggots and the dark and the smell that is getting into her clothes and her hair and the back of her throat, and she cannot get out. She slides down the door until she's sitting on the floor. She closes her mouth, breathes through her nose once, and immediately regrets it. She opens her mouth again and breathes only through that, shallow and deliberate, and tells herself, "You have survived this before. You can survive it again."
It starts with a rock. 3 days before the closet, Mrs. Bush assigned partners for the Earth Science Project, and Ella ended up with Anton Peterson, which was the academic equivalent of being given a broken pencil and told to write a novel. Anton's first response was to tell the class he could smell her from across the room. Ella's response was to say nothing, because she has learned that saying nothing is the fastest path to being left alone. After class, Anton cornered her. "Do the project yourself," he said. "I'll put my name on it." Ella looked at him. The green hair, the swollen cheekbone from whatever fight he'd been in yesterday, the Nike sneakers with the lace on the left shoe fraying, and said, "No." He stared at her. Nobody said no to Anton Peterson. "Fine," he said, after a long moment, "but I'm not going to your house." She hadn't planned to invite him. They met at the park instead. Anton with a library book on igneous rocks, and Ella with her notebook and a pencil sharpened down to a stub. Ella noticed quickly that he was smarter than he let on. He understood the concepts. He struggled with the writing. His letters came out backwards sometimes, the B's and D's swapping places, the words refusing to cooperate, and he shoved the notebook at her with a flash of real shame in his brown eyes and said, "You write it." She wrote it. He didn't say thank you, but he stopped calling her Smella for 2 days, which she counted. Then, on the walk home through the park, Ella found Anton on the ground. There is a version of events in which Ella walks past. In this version, she sees 2 boys in the park, one on the ground, one standing over him, and she recognizes Anton Peterson, who has called her Smella in front of the whole cafeteria, and she thinks, "Not my problem." She keeps walking. She does not walk past. She doesn't fully understand why later. She picks up the rock the way you reach for something you didn't know you needed, instinctively, without planning, the weight of it settling into her palms with a kind of terrible rightness. The boy standing over Anton, his name is Devin, and he is bigger than Anton, bigger than Ella, with the kind of casual cruelty that comes from never once being told no, pulls out a Swiss Army knife. The blade catches the afternoon light. Ella brings the rock down on the back of Devin's head. He folds. He hits the ground and doesn't get up. Anton lies in the dirt staring up at her, bleeding from his lip, his green hair smeared with dirt, his brown eyes gone completely wide. "Is he dead?" Ella asked. "I don't know. I think you knocked him out." She looks at the rock in her hands. She puts it down carefully, as if gentleness now might undo something. "We should go," Anton says. They go. Anton's apartment is on the 4th floor of a brick building 12 minutes from school. It is a revelation. Not because it is nice, it is not especially nice. The walls are off-white and slightly scuffed, the carpet in the hallways thin, the furniture in the living room is worn to the bone. Anton's mother is asleep on the sofa when they arrived, one arm thrown across her face, the television murmuring to itself. Anton steps around her without comment, the way you step around furniture, habitual, automatic, unsurprised. But the apartment does not smell. Ella notices this first and most. It smells of nothing in particular. Carpet and old cooking and a faint something from the bathroom. The ordinary, invisible smell of a lived-in space. Not cigarettes, not rot, not the sweet garbage undertone that has embedded itself into every item of clothing Ella owns. She breathes in the nothing smell, and something in her chest loosens without her permission. Anton's room has a desk, a real desk, clear enough to work at. Clothes on the floor, yes, pushed to the sides in loose piles, but not stacked in towers, not blocking the door, not climbing the walls. She can see the floor in every direction. She can walk from the door to the desk in a straight line. She does not say any of this. She sits down and opens her notebook, and they work on the rock project together. And Anton writes 3 sentences in his backwards letters handwriting and hands it to her with that flash of shame in his brown eyes, and she takes it without comment. And they don't talk about the park. A small, energetic boy bursts through the door. "Anton, is this your girlfriend?" The small boy, Brad, age 8, with the same blue eyes as his brother and an irreverence that suggests he has never once been afraid of Anton, announces that Ella is Anton's girlfriend, receives a toss into the closet as his reward, and then the door locks with the click of a key from the pen holder on the desk. Ella is on her feet before she knows she has stood up. "What are you doing? You have to let him out. That's horrible. You're horrible." "Ella?" Anton is on his feet too, hands raised. "Ella, calm down. It's okay. He likes it. It's a game." "It is not a game. You can't just—" "I taught him to pick locks." She stops. From inside the closet comes a small, focused silence. Then a click, the door swings open, and Brad steps out, triumphant, arms raised like a champion. "Nice," Anton says, high-fiving him. Brad leaves. Anton looks at Ella, who is still standing, still trembling, though she hadn't noticed the trembling until now. "Can you show me how to do that?" Anton looks at her for a moment, not the usual Anton look, the one that calculates how to make her feel small. This is a different look, the kind of look someone gives you when they have understood, without being told, something true about your life. "Yeah," he says, "I'll show you." He straightens a paperclip from the pen holder, not all the way, the tip left with a small, precise bend. He sits beside her on the bed and explains it with the patience of someone who has had to learn patience the hard way. The binding pin, the feel of the give, the moment just before the click when you know it's about to work. She practices with the door open, then again, then a third time, faster, smoother, 5 minutes down to 3, the click becoming familiar, almost satisfying. "Now," Anton says, "you have to try it in the dark." The closet is small, smaller than her own somehow, though it probably isn't. Anton's brother locks it from the outside. The darkness is immediate and total. Ella can feel the walls pressing in. She can feel the ceiling dropping. And beneath both of those, beneath the actual walls and the actual ceiling, she can feel the other closet, the maggots, the sweet rot smell of liquefied peaches, her mother's heels clicking away down the front path. "I can't," she says. Her voice comes out wrong, thin and airless, the voice of someone already somewhere else. "Ella," Anton's voice in the dark, close, his shoulder is almost touching hers. "Don't give up. You can do this. You just did it 3 times. That was different." It's not different. It's the same lock. "Anton, I can't breathe." "You can. I know you can." A pause. When he speaks again, his voice is lower, quieter, stripped of its usual performance, just the words themselves. "You're the most badass girl I know. You gave Devin a concussion and saved my ass. You've been making your mother sick with ipecac for months. You can pick a lock in the dark." She holds the paperclip. She cannot see it. She feels for the keyhole with her fingertip, finds the slot, inserts the bent end with the careful, searching pressure Anton taught her. Feel for the pin. She feels. Her hands stop shaking, not because she is calm, but because the lock requires stillness and her body knows it. The paperclip moves. The pin catches. She pushes. Click. Light. The door swings open, and she is out, and Anton is grinning, actually grinning, the crinkle at the corners of his brown eyes, the chipped tooth catching the light, and before either of them knows it has happened, he has thrown his arms around her in a brief, fierce hug that ends as abruptly as it starts, and he steps back with pink in his face. "Sorry, I shouldn't have." "That's okay," she says. "You did good." "Thank you," she says, and then, "Thank you, Anton." He nods. He looks away. He is 14 years old and has fought half the boys in their school and been put in the principal's office 11 times and carries a lighter he uses to frighten people into leaving him alone. And right now, in the late afternoon light of his small, clean-floored bedroom, he is simply a boy who is glad his friend has learned how to free herself. She holds the paperclip in her palm for a long time on the walk home. She is going to keep this, she decides. She is going to keep this forever. That night, lying in her bed amid the hoard, the fish tank throwing its faint gold rectangle across the ceiling, the closet down the hall still smelling faintly of what it holds, Ella opens her palm and looks at the paperclip. It is a small, cheap, ordinary thing, bent once at the tip, silver in the lamplight. She gets up quietly. She finds the thin, silver chain her mother's boyfriend left behind 2 years ago and never came back for. She threads the paperclip onto the chain. She puts it around her neck and tucks it under her shirt. She lies back down. The smell of the closet drifts under the door. The fish tank glows. The house makes its usual sounds, the shift and creak of all that weight pressing down on it from every side. Ella puts one hand over the paperclip where it lies against her chest. She closes her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she is not afraid of the dark. The kitchen is dark and cold and absolutely silent. The fire in the living room burned itself out sometime in the last hour. The candles are gone. Eleanor took the last one to the bedroom. The only light comes from the window above the sink, where the first gray suggestion of pre-dawn is beginning to separate the sky from the tree line. Barely, like a pencil line drawn by someone who wasn't sure. Casey sits in the chair and breathes. She has been here for 2 hours. She knows this because she can see the clock on the microwave from where she sits. 5:04 a.m. Its green digits the only warm thing in the room. And she has watched it change, minute by minute, while she worked. Her father's voice, patient and precise in her memory. If your hands are ever bound with duct tape, here is what you do. Bring your arms up above your head as high as they will go. Then bring them down, fast, hard, against your ribcage. The acceleration snaps the tape. You'll be out in a second. She has tried this 17 times. The problem, the specific, maddening, inescapable problem, is that Eleanor bound her hands behind her back. The acceleration technique requires a downward swing. Behind her back, the geometry is wrong, the angle impossible. The only movement available, a backward wrenching that sends white-hot bolts of pain through her wrists and achieves nothing except making her shoulders whine in protest. She tries again anyway. She stretches her arms back as far as they will go, the joints screaming, her shoulder blades nearly touching, and then she throws her wrists forward and apart with everything she has. The tape holds. She sits still for a moment, eyes watering, waiting for the pain to subside. Her wrists throb, her shoulders throb. She is sweating despite the cold, which she finds almost insulting given how freezing the kitchen is. Smarter and crueler than she looks, she thinks. I said that to myself the moment I saw her. I should have listened to myself. She looks at the microwave clock, 5:06 a.m. She tries again. The bedroom door opens at 5:47 a.m. Casey hears it before she sees it, the soft creak of the hinge, then footsteps crossing the living room with quiet deliberateness, not the footsteps of someone who just woke up. The footsteps of someone who has been awake for some time, dressed and ready, waiting for a specific moment. Eleanor appears in the kitchen doorway. She is fully dressed, coat on, backpack over one shoulder, switchblade in her right hand with the blade extended, catching the gray dawn light from the window. She looks at Casey in the chair, and her expression is entirely unreadable. Not cold, not warm, simply resolved. The face of someone who has made a decision and is done reconsidering it. Casey's eyes go to the backpack, to the coat, to the knife. "Where is my gun?" "I have it," Eleanor says. "I'm sorry, but I need it." The words "I'm sorry" land somewhere unexpected. Casey files them away. "What are you going to do?" Eleanor's chin lifts slightly. "I told you, I'm going to make sure justice has been served." The notebook, the drawings, the map. Casey's mind assembles them in rapid sequence, trying to find the shape of what is coming. "Eleanor!" "Where is my notebook?" Silence. Casey says nothing. Eleanor steps forward, switchblade level, and Casey feels the old, cold certainty settle through her, the one that always arrives too late, the knowledge that she has miscalculated something important. She says the only true thing she has. "I'm a good person, and I saved your life tonight. Please don't—" The blade moves. Casey flinches, and then goes still, because Eleanor has stepped behind the chair and is cutting. The tape on her ankles first, then the strip across her chest. Not her wrists. Her wrists stay bound. But her legs are free. Her chest is free. Eleanor steps back, regards her. "I don't want you to die," she says, with a matter-of-fact delivery of someone reporting the weather. "People probably don't come by here much. I'm sure you can eventually get your arms free." She turns for the door. "Wait." Eleanor pauses with her hand on the door. She does not turn around. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Talk." Eleanor's voice carries the exhausted contempt of someone who has been asked to have a conversation they don't have time for. "You want to talk." "It's not safe out there." Casey measures her words carefully. Not a command, not a plea, something in between. "It's not safe out there. Fallen branches everywhere, the yard is a wreck, and all you've got are those sneakers." "I'll be fine." "At least take my boots." Eleanor looks down at Casey's bare feet, then at her own small feet in waterlogged sneakers. Something flickers across her face. Not moved, exactly, but noting the offer. She shakes her head. "They won't fit me." "Let me make you breakfast before you go." Now Eleanor does turn around, slowly, with a look of such weary disbelief that Casey almost smiles despite herself. "Why?" Eleanor asks. "So you can wait for the phone lines to come back and call the police?" "No, I infinity promised, remember?" "That is bullshit," Eleanor says pleasantly, "and you know it." She opens the front door, the pre-dawn air comes in, cold and wet and smelling of torn earth and fallen wood, and then the door closes, and Eleanor is gone, and Casey is alone in the dark kitchen with her hands still bound behind a chair and the green microwave clock reading 5:51 a.m. She listens to the silence for exactly 3 seconds. Then she gets up. She is not graceful about it. Getting upright with her hands wrenched behind her back and her shoulders already screaming from 2 hours of struggle is an exercise in controlled humiliation. She knocks her hip on the counter. She overshoots the drawer she is aiming for and has to shuffle sideways. The drawer handle, small, cheap, decorative, nearly defeats her before she gets it open with the backs of her fingers. But the edge of the drawer is metal, old, slightly corroded, and she angles her wrists against it, sharp enough. She starts rubbing. It is slow. It is ungainly. It is nothing like the movies where people snap free from restraints in a single decisive moment. It is 10 minutes of methodical burning work, the tape fraying strand by strand, her wrists raw and hot beneath it, her shoulders protesting every shift of angle. But the tape is duct tape, and duct tape is not, ultimately, designed to withstand sustained abrasion against corroded metal. She feels the give before she hears it,
a loosening, a release of tension, and then she pulls her wrists apart with one good yank, and they come free, and she straightens up and stands in her kitchen and breathes. Her wrists are marked red. Her shoulders ache in a deep, structural way that suggests tomorrow will be worse. She doesn't care. She goes to the living room. She finds the notebook under the sofa cushion where she hid it. She picks up the flashlight from the coffee table, still working, battery half gone, but enough, and she opens the notebook and she looks, really looks, this time.
The math homework. She turns past it. The drawings. She slows down. She has been afraid of these drawings since the moment she found them. Afraid in the specific, sick way you are afraid when you recognize yourself in something terrible. But now she holds the flashlight close and she looks at them without the panic. And she notices, for the first time, the things she missed. The eyes. The woman in the drawings has eyes rendered as black circles, flat, dark, inked in with a blue pen pressed hard. Casey has blue eyes, bright blue, the color of her jeans, the feature people notice first. An artist drawing Casey would use the blue, would have to use the blue. The nose, a sharp line, steep and narrow. Casey's nose is not like that. And then, on every single drawing, without exception, on every depiction of this woman being bound and mutilated and hung from a ceiling, a small, precise dot, just below the curve of the lower lip, slightly left of center. A beauty mark. Casey touches her own skin below the lip. Smooth. Nothing. She sits very still in the dark living room with the flashlight and the notebook and the feeling of something reorganizing itself rapidly inside her understanding of the last several hours. She turns to the last page of the notebook, the one she hadn't reached before, the one at the back. A man, lying in a pool of blood, and standing over him, a red-haired girl with a knife, and above the drawing, written in that small, careful handwriting, a name, an address, half a mile away. Casey looks up from the notebook. She looks at the front door. She unfolds the map. She has looked at this before, found it on the floor, assumed the star was pointing here, to this cabin, to this property. It seemed obvious. Eleanor had arrived here, this was the destination. But that was panic logic, storm logic, the logic of a woman who had found a pale face at her window and a flashlight in her tool shed and a blood-soaked child with a knife, and whose entire perceptual field had collapsed to the radius of this cabin and this night. She looks at the map now with the cold, methodical eye of a person who has been a teacher and knows how children write directions. The roads are labeled, the turns are noted, and the star, she traces the route with her fingertip, following it past her own driveway, continuing along the road, turning at the junction marked with a small, crooked tree, half a mile further. Lee's driveway, Lee's cottage, Lee's door. Casey closes her eyes for a moment. She thinks about Eleanor's questions at the cookie tin. Who is Lee? A boyfriend? What does he look like? What color are his eyes? She had thought the girl was teasing her about her love life, the bored, shrewd interrogation of a 12-year-old assessing adult relationships. She had been wrong. Eleanor was building a picture, confirming an identity. She thinks about what Eleanor said in the bathroom before bed, voice flat and careful. My father was a terrible person. He left before I was born. He didn't care about us. She thinks about the cigarette burns on Eleanor's arms. She thinks about a girl who follows a hand-drawn map through a storm to find the man she believes abandoned her to a life of it, who draws his death in a notebook with patient, precise detail, who arrives carrying a switchblade and a gun and nothing personal on her lips. A 12-year-old going to do what the world didn't? Casey stands up. She thinks about Lee, his blue eyes and his easy smile and his broken nose and the birthday cookies and the way he always comes to check on her, persistent and patient, once a week, finding reasons to knock. She thinks about the feeling she has never been able to shake, that something underneath his kindness doesn't quite add up, that the explanation for why a man like him moved to the middle of nowhere is a blatant lie. She thinks, whatever you are hiding, Lee, you do not deserve to die for it at the hands of a 12-year-old. She goes to find her coat. The yard outside is a wreck. The great oak tree lay where it fell, its enormous trunk crossing the property like a fallen wall, the crushed skeleton of the tool shed barely visible beneath it. Branches are down everywhere. The mud is deep and churned and still steaming faintly where the roots tore free. The sky is the color of old pewter, the rain down to a thin drizzle, the wind finally, mercifully, spent. Casey stands on the porch in her waterproof jacket and her galoshes, the flashlight in her hand. She thinks about it. She actually thinks about it. She is not a woman who acts without thinking. She has learned, the hard way, the cost of acting without thinking. She lost her teaching job that way. She lost a version of herself she had worked very hard to build. She knows what it costs to let the dark part of herself off the leash. And she knows it is not a decision to make lightly. She thinks, Eleanor is 12 years old. She has cigarette burns on her arms and a gun that belongs to me and a notebook full of drawings she made because the world gave her no other way to hold what she carries. She thinks Lee is half a mile away and does not know she is coming. She thinks, if I go, I might be wrong about everything. If I don't go, I might be wrong about something worse. She steps off the porch. The mud takes her first step and holds it. She pulls free and keeps walking, the flashlight cutting a thin yellow path through the gray pre-dawn, the fallen branches requiring detours, the mud requiring caution. The path through the woods is strewn with debris. Small branches, pine needles, a section of fence from somewhere she can't identify. The trees drip steadily onto her shoulders. Half a mile. She has walked it before in easier conditions. She walks it now. The walk feels longer than half a mile. Every step sinks. The mud grabs at Casey's boots and tries to keep them. Fallen branches litter the path like snapped bones, and the trees around her drip steadily in the thin, miserable drizzle left behind by the storm. Dawn is beginning, but only barely. The first orange light is spreading low across the horizon, weak and diluted, as if the sun itself is hesitant to involve itself in what this morning is about to become. Then, Lee's cabin appears through the trees. The windows are dark. Casey slows, breathing hard, her jeans soaked halfway to the knee with mud and rainwater. The cabin looks still, too still, the kind of stillness that makes a person lower their footsteps even when there is no point to quiet anymore. Then she sees it. One of the living room windows is wide open. Lee would have closed his windows before the storm. Of course he would have. He is exactly that kind of man. Careful, practical, the sort of person who checks shutters and boards and weather seals before the rain begins. Which means the window was opened after the storm, by someone small enough to climb through it. The front door is locked. Casey stares at it for one furious second, then remembers the spare key she keeps back at her own cabin, remembers too late that she left in such a rush she brought nothing but her flashlight and her fear. So the window it is. She climbs awkwardly, one knee on the sill, one hand gripping the frame, and realizes halfway through that Eleanor must have made this look much easier than it is. Casey is taller, heavier, less suited to entry through tight spaces. Her wet boot slips on the painted wood, and the next second she is falling forward into Lee's living room in a graceless, full-body collapse that leaves her sprawled on the floorboards, winded and furious, and deeply aware that she has made exactly the kind of entrance that forfeits all dignity. She pushes herself up and finds Eleanor standing over her. The girl is holding Casey's Glock in her right hand. Her expression is unreadable. Not triumphant, not frightened, just waiting, as if Casey's arrival was another variable she had considered, another complication folded into the morning's plan. For one suspended second, neither of them speaks. Then Casey says, very carefully, "Where is Lee?" Eleanor doesn't lower the gun. Still asleep. Casey's heart stutters. "You haven't done it yet?" The girl's mouth twitches. Not quite a smile, not quite anything humanly comfortable. I was working up the nerve. Casey looks at the gun, then at the bedroom door, then back at Eleanor. Something in her chest loosens. Not relief exactly, because there is still a child in a stranger's cabin with a loaded gun and a notebook full of murder, but a sliver of time has opened. A gap. A chance. "Eleanor, don't call me that." "Nell, then." Casey pushes herself slowly to sitting. "Listen to me. I know you think you know what's happening. I know you think you came here for a reason, but you need to put the gun down before this becomes something you can't take back." Nell's face hardens at once, all 12 years of her suddenly visible and none of them childlike. "Too late for that," she says. And just then, behind them, the bedroom door opens. Lee steps into the room in checkered pajamas. His hair is mussed from sleep. There is still the fog of it on his face, the half-awake confusion of someone who has heard an odd sound in his living room and come out to expect a raccoon maybe, or Casey with storm news, and instead finds Casey on the floor and a tiny girl pointing a gun at him. He stops dead. His blue eyes move from Casey to Nell to the Glock. He raises his hands automatically, not from courage, but from instinct. "This must be a misunderstanding," he says. Even now, in this moment, he sounds more bewildered than frightened. "Casey." Nell swivels the gun toward him with immediate precision. "Don't move." He freezes. "I want to see your hands in the air." His hands go higher. Casey watches his face as understanding begins to arrive. It doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in steps. Confusion, then concern, then the first thin edge of fear as he realizes this isn't a game, isn't a prank, isn't anything a reasonable man would expect to wake up to. "Please," he says quietly, "help me out here. Tell me your name." The girl's chin lifts. "Eleanor Kettering. Everybody calls me Nell, but of course you wouldn't know that because you abandoned me and my mother before I was even born." Once Nell starts talking, the words come fast. They have been waiting a long time. "You left her," she says. "You left us, and she had to do everything by herself. And then all these men came around and they hurt her and they hurt me, and you didn't care because you were gone." Her voice doesn't break. That's the worst part. There is no childish wobble in it, no plea for comfort hidden beneath the accusation. This is not a girl asking for an explanation. This is a girl delivering a sentence. Lee has gone very pale. "Jolene," he says, and the name leaves his mouth like something dragged up from underwater. "Oh, God." Nell's grip on the gun tightens. "Tell me why you did it. Tell me why you left us." Lee looks helplessly at Casey, as if she might translate the room into something survivable. She cannot. "I never dated your mother." The silence after that is total. Not because anyone believes him, because it is not the answer anyone expected. Nell stares, Casey stares, Lee swallows once. "I know, Jolene, I did, but I am not your father. That's not possible."
Nell's whole body goes rigid. "You're lying." "No, I found the folder." Her voice sharpens now, not with confidence, but with desperation. She needs him to be lying. She has crossed too much darkness for him not to be the right monster. "My birth certificate was in it," she says, "and your name, your old address, your phone number. Why would my mother have all that if you weren't my father?" Lee closes his eyes for the briefest second. "Because she asked me for money." Nell's face changes, not softening, not yet, but shifting under the blow of information that doesn't fit the shape she built. "Money? She contacted me years ago, around the time you were born." He looks straight at her now, voice low and steady despite the gun still pointed at him. "I thought it was a scam. I thought she was trying to get something from me. I didn't know there was a baby. I didn't know there was you." Casey feels the room tilt slightly around this new truth, not because it resolves anything, it doesn't, but because it rearranges the architecture of Nell's rage. If Lee isn't the father, then where does all that fury go? What happens to a mission when the target disappears while the gun remains? Nell asks the next question in almost a whisper. Then, who was he? Lee lowers one hand half an inch, then remembers the gun and freezes again. Your father, he says, was my brother. Nell says nothing. Casey says nothing. The words hang in the room like smoke. Lee goes on more quietly now, as if volume itself might hurt. He was the one who dated Jolene, not me. Nell's eyes flicker. Casey can almost see the math happening behind them, the rapid subtraction and substitution of names, blame, blood. Uncle instead of father. Wrong man, wrong life, wrong revenge. Where is he? Nell asks. Lee's face folds inward just slightly. A real grief this time, not fear, not shock. Something older. He died in a car accident 12 years ago. That does it. The gun doesn't fire. It doesn't fall either. It simply droops, the barrel tilting toward the floor as if gravity has finally found it. Nell drops to her knees. The tears come at all once. Big, ugly, child-sized tears that have clearly been waiting behind rage because rage was easier to carry. Her shoulders shake. The gun slips lower in her hand. She makes one sound, small, broken, involuntary, and then she is crying too hard to say anything else. Casey crosses the room slowly. She takes the Glock out of Nell's hand. Nell lets her. They end up on the sofa. It is absurd, in a way, after all that fear, all that rain, all that blood and notebooks and duct tape and open windows, to land on something so ordinary as a sofa. But ordinary is what the human body wants after terror. A place to sit, a surface that doesn't move, a corner of the world that stays put. Nell tells them what happened. Her mother's boyfriend, Jax, stabbed Jolene during a fight. There was yelling first, accusations, drugs, another woman, then blood. So much blood. Nell tried to help her mother and got it all over her clothes, her hands, the inside of her backpack. Jax told her the police would blame her, said they would see the blood and the knife and the trouble she'd gotten into at school, and they would lock her up forever. So she ran. She took the folder, she took the map she made from the address, she took the switchblade, and she came here looking for the father she thought had abandoned her, because if he was the reason her life had become what it was, then he ought to pay for it. Lee sits very still while she speaks. When she is done, he says, gently, "You can stay here with me if you want." Nell looks at him through the ruins of her crying. She does not say yes, she does not say no, but she doesn't leave. Casey listens, and as Nell speaks, Casey feels something painful and familiar beneath her ribs. Recognition, not of circumstance, but of shape. A child trapped with an abusive mother. A child who learns too young that no one is coming to save her. A child who reaches the point where justice and survival begin to look like the same thing. She looks at the pale scars on Nell's arms. Then, without really deciding to, she pulls up her sleeve. There, on her own skin, are the same white circles. Nell looks at them and goes still. For a moment, the room holds its breath again, but differently now. Not in fear, in understanding. Casey doesn't explain all of it, not here, not yet, but the gesture says enough. I know what she did to you. I know what it means to carry that into your body. I know what kind of thoughts come after. And because Casey knows too much, she also knows one more thing. If Jolene is still alive, this is not over. Not for Nell. Not by a long shot. The sun is fully up now, though it gives very little warmth. The storm is over, the misunderstanding is over, the gun is unloaded and on the table, Nell is no longer pointing it at anyone, Lee is no longer the father she came to punish. But Casey can feel with the clarity of instinct that this is not the last truth waiting in this story. This is only the truth Nell needed in order not to kill the wrong man. There are still names beneath names, still histories beneath histories, still a brother who dated Jolene, still a dead or not dead father-shaped absence at the center of a 12-year-old girl's life. And somewhere inside Casey, something old and flammable has already begun to burn. Because Nell survived the night. But survival is not the same thing as safety. And if the world is going to hand this child back to Jolene, to the cigarettes, the men, the blood, the fear, Casey already knows in the deepest and darkest part of herself that she is not going to let that happen.
By morning, the crisis at Lee's cabin has settled on the surface. The gun is no longer in Nell's hands. Lee is alive. The misunderstanding about her father has been stopped before it turned into murder. Nell is on the sofa, wrung out by grief, and Lee is trying, carefully, gently, to become the sort of adult she might someday trust. But Casey already knows something the others don't. If Jolene is still alive, none of this is over. Nell can learn the truth about her father. She can hand over the gun. She can cry herself empty on Lee's couch. None of that changes what waits for her if she is sent back to the wrong place, to the wrong woman, to the same cigarettes and same fear and same men rotating through the apartment like bad weather. So Casey tells a lie. She tells Lee she is going to handle things, going to take care of the practical part, going to do what needs to be done. It sounds enough like police station that no one presses her too hard. But that isn't where she goes. She drives south instead. As the road unspools beneath her, Casey feels the old machinery in herself click into place. Not panic, not rage, but that colder thing, the thing her father taught her to call justice when the law was too slow, too stupid, or too willing to look away. She thinks of another girl she once failed to save. She thinks of Nell's scarred arms. She thinks of her own. By the time she reaches Massachusetts, her mind is no longer debating. It is decided. Jolene lives exactly where a woman like Jolene would live. The house is tired before you even reach the basement steps, sagging, neglected, one bad season away from collapse. Around the side, 3 concrete steps sink toward a basement door. A broken-down Pinto sits out back like a permanent apology. The whole place looks as though it has been surviving by accident for years. Casey uses the key Nell gave her. Inside, the apartment is close and stale. Not hoarded, not like Ella's childhood house, but cluttered in the worn-down way of people who've stopped believing in improvement. Cardboard boxes crowd one wall. The kitchen is too small, too dim, too tired. The air is thick with cigarette smoke buried under cheap air freshener. Under both is the sour smell of spoiled food. For one sharp second, Casey wonders if she's too late, if the smell is death. Then she sees Jolene. She is on the kitchen floor, slumped in the corner, wearing a glittery pink tank top made sad by context. Bleached blonde hair, square jaw, dark eyes reduced to slits, pale, clammy skin. There is blood across her front shirt, some of it dried, some of it still fresh enough to shine. A stab wound, shallow breaths. She is alive, though barely. Casey pauses in the doorway and takes all of it in. Jax is gone. Jolene is helpless. And Casey, seeing her there, feels not mercy, but recognition. The ugly kind. The kind that comes when you know exactly what kind of mother lies bleeding in front of you and exactly what kind of child she made. At first, Casey pretends to be there to help. It is practical. A wounded woman is more likely to talk if she thinks rescue has arrived. So Casey lets Jolene believe she is some kind of paramedic or emergency response, a person who has come because the yelling finally reached someone willing to answer it.
Jolene is angry before she is grateful. She complains that she has been shouting since the day before, demands a hospital, demands movement, demands help. There is no concern in her voice for her daughter, no frantic question about where Nell went, no crack of fear for what the girl may have seen. Casey asks about the burns. At first, Jolene dodges, minimizes, blames. The girl asks for it. The girl never learns. The girl needs discipline. Casey stands over her, gloved hands still, and realizes with absolute clarity that this woman is not sorry, not even now, not bleeding on the kitchen floor, not abandoned by the man who stabbed her, not 1 inch from the grave. The system would call this an interrogation. Casey knows better. This is confirmation.
Casey finds the cigarettes. Of course she does. Women like Jolene always keep their rituals close. The pack, the lighter, the smell of stale smoke baked into the apartment walls. Everything about the place confirms what Casey already knows. And the moment Casey holds the cigarette between her own fingers, she understands exactly why this has to be done this way. Not because she enjoys cruelty, not because she wants spectacle, because pain, to someone like Jolene, has to arrive in a language she recognizes. She asks again about Nell. Again, Jolene calls her a bad apple. Again, she insists the girl deserved what happened to her. And under pressure, under the slowly narrowing corridor Casey gives her between confession and consequence, Jolene finally admits it. She burned Nell. More than once. As punishment, as a lesson, because that is what rotten children require in her mind. Casey hears the words and feels something old split open inside her. Not rage exactly, something more focused than rage. Memory sharpened into action. Because once, long ago, another mother said the same kinds of things about another girl. Another difficult child, another bad apple, another body marked for instruction. Casey looks at the cigarette in her hand, looks at Jolene's arm, looks at the pale circles on Nell's skin in her memory, and from that point on, the morning moves in only one direction. What happens next, Casey will never call murder in her own head, not because she is innocent. Because she is not. She knows precisely what she is doing. That is the point. She is not acting in a blur. She is not losing herself to temper. She is carrying out a sentence that, in her private and terrible moral framework, has already been earned. Her father taught her long ago that sometimes the world produces people who will keep hurting children for as long as they are allowed to keep breathing. The law catches some of them, social workers rescue some of them, hospitals and schools and neighbors occasionally intervene, and some of them slip through every crack. Jolene, Casey decides, will not. So Casey makes the punishment fit the crime. She mirrors the pain, forces the truth into the room and refuses to look away from it. And when that is no longer enough, when confession has been extracted and the shape of Casey's character is fully visible, and there is still no remorse inside it, Casey takes the final step as deliberately as all the others. When she leaves the apartment, Jolene will never hurt Nell again. That, Casey tells herself, is the only line that matters. The apartment is quiet when Casey leaves. Not peaceful, never that. Just finished. She lets herself out the way she came in, up the concrete steps, back into the weak daylight of late morning. The air outside feels cleaner than it should. The world goes on offensively unchanged. Wet pavement, tired grass, the same broken-down car, the same indifferent sky, as though the ground has not just shifted beneath 3 different lives. In the car, Casey sits with both hands on the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. She does not tremble. She does not cry. What she feels is stranger and colder, a sense of alignment, of a dark equation finally balanced. Not happiness, not relief, something harder to admit. Satisfaction. Then, underneath it, the practical thoughts begin. What to say, what not to say, how to return, how to look Nell in the eye and offer her a future that does not include the woman she feared most, how to survive whatever comes next. By the time Casey turns the car north again, she already knows two things. Lee is going to understand more than he should, and she is going to need him to say nothing. When Casey gets back, the shape of things has already begun to harden. Nell has no mother left to return to. Lee, as Casey expected, is not stupid. He knows the timeline, knows where she said she was going and how long she was gone, knows enough to add up the silence around her and arrive at the truth without making her speak it aloud. But the remarkable thing about Lee is not that he figures it out. It is that he stays. He gives her something better than absolution, because absolution would require judgment first. He gives her an alibi. He tells the story the world can live with. He closes the gap she left open, and in doing so, he reveals himself to Casey more clearly than he ever has before. Not innocent, not naive, but someone whose moral lines are bent in eerily compatible ways. Someone who looks at child abuse and sees not a complicated social issue, but a thing that forfeits your right to mercy. It is not romantic, this realization. Not yet, but it is intimate. When Casey returns, Lee already knows. He doesn't know every detail, not exactly, not yet, but he knows enough. He knows she did not go where she claimed she was going. He knows the timeline no longer fits the version of events anyone polite could pretend to believe. He knows that somewhere south of New Hampshire, something irreversible has happened, and that Casey came back wearing the expression of a person who has stepped through a door and shut it behind herself. And then he does something extraordinary. He helps her. Not with panic, not with judgment, not with shocked moral outrage. Lee simply rearranges the facts into a version the outside world can survive. He gives Casey an alibi so complete it sounds almost domestic. She was there, with him and Nell, the whole afternoon. She didn't go anywhere. If anyone asks, he saw her, Nell saw her. She was never out of sight except for the bathroom. It is the kind of lie that only works if the teller believes it should. And Lee does believe it should. He does not say outright that he knows what she did. He does not make her confess. But his meaning is clear enough. A woman who burns children with cigarettes forfeits her right to much sympathy, much mercy, much life. In this, Casey finds something both comforting and deeply dangerous. Someone whose moral compass bends toward hers in all the wrong ways. The relationship between them changes right there, in the space between accusation and protection. Before, Lee was her suspiciously kind neighbor. After, he is something else entirely, an accomplice. Nell does not leave. That, more than anything, becomes the beginning. At first, it is practical. Lee is the closest thing she has to family now, and family, however accidental, however delayed, however poorly timed, is still the strongest currency a damaged child can be offered. He tells her she can stay. He doesn't force warmth on her. He doesn't crowd her brief. He simply opens the possibility and lets her sit near it until she's ready. Casey, too, begins in practical ways. She makes food, she finds clean clothes that almost fit. She teaches Nell how to settle into a room without bracing for attack. She becomes the kind of adult who notices if a child is too quiet, too flinching, too hungry, too fast to apologize. It comes naturally to her, not because she had that adult herself, but because she did not. And because Casey was once a teacher, and because Nell is a child who needs structure as much as safety, lessons begin to appear quietly inside the days. Reading, maths, routine, little pieces of order replacing the old chaos. Nell, it turns out, is frighteningly smart. The same mind that made maps through storms and built narratives sharp enough to kill can also solve problems quickly, see patterns instantly, hold on to information like it matters. Casey recognizes the intelligence immediately. And perhaps more dangerously, she recognizes the loneliness behind it. Time passes the way it always does after catastrophe, unevenly at first, then all at once. Days blur into a new arrangement. Casey still has her own cabin, technically, but she spends almost all her waking hours at Lee's place, 7 days a week, morning to night. The geography of her life shifts without anyone formally announcing it. She stops being a visitor and starts being a fixture. Nell begins to fill out. Her face loses some of its gaunt sharpness. Her eyes remain enormous, watchful things, but they no longer look quite so ready for the next blow. She learns when dinner will be, learns that no one is going to lock her in anything, learns that boots on a floor are just boots, not a warning, learns that silence in a house can be peaceful. Casey teaches, Lee repairs things, and Nell watches both of them with the wary concentration of a child deciding minute by minute if trust is safe enough to invest in. And slowly, against everyone's better judgment and despite all available evidence, something like a family begins to form. Not a clean one, not an innocent one, but real. Casey begins to want things she had long ago convinced herself she no longer wanted. Not grand things, not fairy tale things, smaller, more dangerous things. A life built around the same kitchen, a child doing homework at the same table every afternoon, a man who remembers to stack firewood before dusk, and who, when the world goes dark, does not leave. Every time she looks at Lee now, she feels it. A small internal tug, almost embarrassing in its simplicity. He is no longer merely suspicious or handsome or oddly persistent. He is woven into the daily mechanics of care. He makes Nell laugh sometimes. He takes burdens without announcing himself as noble for doing so. He stands beside Casey in ways that make solitude feel, for the first time in years, optional. And yet there is still something unresolved beneath it all, because Lee has secrets. He always has. Casey feels that as surely as she feels the attraction. It is there in the moments he watches her too carefully, in the way his concern sometimes arrives too early, as though he anticipated something before it happened. In the fact that he stepped into her moral darkness, not with surprise, but with recognition. That is not the reaction of a man seeing her clearly for the first time. That is the reaction of a man who already knew what she was capable of. The first real crack appears through Rudy. Of all people. Rudy, with his cigarettes and yellow teeth and petty grievances, says something in passing that Casey cannot stop hearing. When Lee first rented the neighboring cabin, he hadn't merely asked whether the other place was occupied. He had asked about her. Not Casey, not the tenant next door, not the woman in the cabin. He had asked for Elizabeth, or more precisely, for the version of her name that belonged to older paperwork, older histories, older selves, the version almost no one uses, the version that does not belong to the person she presents herself as now. Casey feels the floor shift under her. Because Lee should not know that name. He should not know enough about her to request her specifically before they had even met. He should not have arrived in her life already oriented toward her. And yet, he did. Then comes the second crack. And this one is worse. At some point, almost casually, almost in passing, Lee calls her Ella. Just once. A slip. Small enough that another person might have missed, but Casey doesn't miss it, because Ella is not a name from her present life. It is the buried name, the childhood name, the name connected to the house, the fire, Anton, the girl she used to be before she built Casey around the ruins. No one should know it. When she challenges him, Lee offers an explanation that sounds plausible until you look at it too hard. Something about seeing it on a letter or picking it up somewhere or a confusion of names. But Casey knows immediately that it is false. The lie isn't even especially good. That's what makes it chilling. He is too calm because he is improvising after being caught. From then on, she starts seeing him differently. Not just as a man with secrets, as a man whose secrets are specifically about her. By the 6-month mark, the arrangement has become almost ordinary from the outside. Casey and Nell spend their days at Lee's cabin in New Hampshire. Nell is being homeschooled. Lee has become her guardian in practice and intention, if not immediately in every bureaucratic detail. The routines are steadier now. Meals happen, lessons happen, mornings begin without dread, nights end without fear. Casey has what she once thought most wanted: usefulness, belonging, a reason to wake up and move towards someone else's need. And she has Lee, who has become both shelter and question mark. Then Nell shows her a photograph. It is a picture of her father. Casey takes one look, and the entire room seems to tilt. Because the face in the photograph belongs to Anton. Not abstractly, not resemblance, possibility. Anton, her Anton, the green-haired boy who became the first person to teach her how to escape, the first person to see her, the first person she lost. Grief arrives before understanding does. Then understanding comes too. Nell is Anton's daughter, which means Lee is not just Lee. He's Bradley, Anton's brother, the little boy from the apartment, grown taller, bearded, hidden in plain sight all along. Once Casey knows, other pieces slide into place with terrible ease. Why Lee seemed to know too much, why he watched her the way he did, why he moved here at all, why her old name lived behind his teeth, why he offered protection so quickly and understanding even quicker. He didn't stumble into her life. He came looking for her, not as a predator, not as a coincidence, as a messenger of an old unfinished story, as the younger brother of the boy who once loved her, the boy who is now serving a life sentence for killing the father who brutalized them both. Bradley, Lee, has been visiting Anton all this time, weekly, quietly, carrying updates between the life inside prison walls and the life outside them. And somewhere along the way, Anton saw Casey's name in the news or heard enough to understand that she was still out there, still alive, still becoming herself in violent and imperfect ways. So he sent Bradley to watch over her, to make sure she was okay. This knowledge should make Casey angry. Instead, it makes her feel something harder to classify. Watched, loved, betrayed, protected, all at once. By the end of this chapter of their lives, the three of them exist inside a strange kind of peace. Nell has safety, Casey has purpose, Lee has proximity to the woman he was sent to find and the child he was always meant, by blood if not by expectation, to protect. But the peace is not innocent. It cannot be. This house, whether it is Lee's cabin or the emotional structure they've built inside it, stands on layers of things unsaid. Jolene's death, Casey's past, Anton's absence, Bradley's false name, the alibi, the watching, the love that began long before its target knew she was being kept in sight. Casey knows all of that now, and still, when she looks at the life forming around her, the books on the table, the child in the next room, the sound of Lee moving through the house, she wants it. That may be the darkest truth of all. By 6 months later, the violence has settled into routine. Not disappeared, never disappeared, just folded itself into the ordinary shape of days. Morning happens in Lee's cabin now, or Bradley's, though Casey does not yet think of him that way all the time. The kitchen table is lit by lamps instead of candles. Breakfast sits warm on plates, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. Nell has a 7th grade math textbook open in front of her, and the whole scene carries the fragile, almost shocking atmosphere of domestic normalcy, the kind of morning Casey once believed belonged only to other people. Casey is there nearly every day, nearly all day. She still technically has her own cabin, but in every way that matters, her life has migrated here. She teaches Nell, she watches Nell gain weight, confidence, rhythm. She watches the girl become less skeletal, less braced for disaster, less like a child standing permanently in a doorway waiting to be yelled at. Safety, Casey discovers, changes a face before it changes anything else. And Lee, steady, practical, warm in his careful way, has become part of the architecture of that safety. Casey misses him when he leaves, feels that small, involuntary internal pull every time he stands too close in the kitchen or says something kind without making it sound like charity. She wants him. More frighteningly, she wants the life around him, the table, the woods, the child doing homework nearby, the idea that maybe she could belong inside a home without destroying it.